Okay, here we have complex breakables. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. There'll be more in-depth explanations in the longer video series. I've made a model that is pretty quirky. You'll see it in a moment, and you'll understand what I mean. But let's first go through the steps. 1, we're going to export the model. 2, we're going to create sets. 3, we'll process the sets. And then 4, we can export it by doing Physit. Okay, that's just basically it. Alright, so you see our model here, and you see what I mean by goofy. The point here is that I'm going to have these pillars stuck in the ground. They won't move. These objects will break and then turn into each will turn into 4 teapots and 2 springs. Yeah, it's just an example model, but I like to have a little fun while I'm doing this stuff. Okay, let's turn wireframe mode on and begin. Okay, now you see that none of our objects are fully saturated red, blue, or green. So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to start off by just making them all red, and then seeing I'd like the springs to be blue. So those will go blue for capsules. Okay. And I prefer some of the teapots. I'll do every other one as sphere. Okay. And at this point, let's continue on with the export. Okay. First thing we want to do is export the models. And with a breakable object setup here without swinging joints, we keep our pivots at 0. And of course, that's already marked for us, and we're going to rename our geometry. So basically, for a complex breakable that is just like a regular building structure that has breakable joints and breakable objects, all you need to do is set up your scene, color code your models or your meshes, and leave everything alone and export that. Now, I gave the panel the ability to do other things by allowing you to control pivots and rename geometry and other things like that, because this panel is set up for you to be able to create complex breakables where the building will fall apart, yet there's still a pillar there, and all of a sudden a stretched taut rope became a dangling rope, or a stretched taut chain became a dangling chain. Of course, there's many ways of doing that, and this panel will allow you pretty much any way that you choose to do it. Okay, let's proceed on. Now, you remember in the last video, if you watched the last video, that I talked about the mesh to delete mesh set. And you'll see that if we select it, it looks like it's our mesh that we exported, but it's actually a copy. And it's set into the scene so that we can make sure that all of our collision volumes are properly set up to be used correctly against our visual meshes. I know that this is pretty clean because I'm just used to using Max on a daily basis with this stuff lately. So I know that I'm just going to delete that mesh to delete set. Okay. Now let's begin setup here, and how we do that is, well, let's turn everything visible. You can select all and turn it all visible. Now we can see colors here. Okay, we have our actors created list. Now in the list you can select the objects and the scene will zoom directly to that object, but I prefer to do this a different way. Okay, now these 2 objects are never going to be added to a set, so we're going to hide those. Okay, now what I mean by sets is what is breakable and what shows up after that breakable object is broken. This pillar is going to be breakable, so it's going to be the unbroken object, and then these things are going to be what appears when that pillar is broken. Okay, now we're really going to make this a jointed set so that the pillar doesn't move. Now if I process this set now, in the scene the pillar will receive the break information. So when that pillar breaks, those objects will show. But since we're going to create a joint with this set, the joint will receive that information instead. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sure the documentation can clear that up. Alright, well, let's make set 1 so we can continue on. We select make a joint by selecting the joint box, make set 1. Okay. Now, those actors have been removed from this actors created list. Okay. And you'll see down here that this is like a joint set list. And if we click the J, which means that there's a joint for the set, and if there's an X, there's no joint for the set. Okay, we can select all the objects in that set. Shift and click will give you the unbroken object. Control and click will give you the broken objects. It's nice and easy like that. Let's unhide our other two shapes here. And we're going to set up this joint real quick. We can go down to joints for complex breakables and deal with this in a short manner. Okay. By clicking J1, we're selecting the joint of group 1. And this panel will force settings into use when selected, when these buttons are used. Okay. Now we need to put at least one object to this joint, or else the joint will not be exported from the scene. We want the kinematic actor to be the base of the pillar here. Nice and easy. That's pretty much done. You can select J1 set. I like to hide the things as I'm done with them. Okay. And well, actually unhide. You can see here we can go down here and select the mesh that's associated with the joint, hide it, and select the set that's associated together and hide that, and we're on our way to keeping things organized and clean. Now I want this object down here just to remain static in the scene. I'm not going to create a joint for this set, so I'm going to select this pillar. I'm going to add that object, then hide it, select these objects, add them to the broken list, and I'm going to remove joint and make set 2. As you see, I have an X here. If I go down to our joint panel, whoops, and I select J2 for set 2's joint, you see that there's no joint with that set. Okay, nice and easy. We can hide these now too because they are placed into a set, and you see that we have 3 actors left. Let's unhide everything so that we can see this properly as we select them through the list. Okay, there's our top actor and our 2 bases of the structure here. Now those objects are not going to become part of any set. Okay. But what we do want is these two to be kinematic. So we're going to go down here to our control panel and change these to kinematic bodies. Okay. At this point we can process, and you'll see that the joint, the joint has received our user-defined properties, which is all of those objects that are going to disappear and appear. And this portion, or this pillar, has received the same. Okay. And we can Physit at this point. It's nice and easy. I can talk about these buttons here that were activated after we press process a different time. This is for grouping actors so that you have a more realistic collision volume for complex geometry. Okay, so let's just Physit and load this into the engine because I know that you guys are probably bored of watching this by now. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this. Okay, I've loaded T3D and put several of these models into the scene, and I'm going to show you what happens here. We have the pillar bases and the board on top. Let's shoot the board on top from far away, and you see that the main base falls over for the one object that is not jointed. Now let's shoot that object, and you'll see that our joints have flown way over here from the explosion. Let's just shoot it now, and you can see a better reaction here. And our pillars break into teapots and springs.